Blessings, my fellow souls. The key to peace is forgiveness. If you want peace in your family, you must be willing to eventually overlook the things of the past which were hurtful and unkind. You must be able to learn from the past, and you must be able to forgive, to forget, and to move forward. This is the only way you will live a peaceful life with your family. As emotional beings, this is a fact of life. This is also an unchanging truth. Being loving, being kind, being compassionate, being tolerant, being patient, and being forgiving, these are divine virtues which are taught by all the great writings and scriptures, but they are not very often practiced. We are inherently peaceful, blissful, tolerant, patient, compassionate, kind, and yes, forgiving. But we have not been taught to forgive. Instead, we're taught to remember the hurts and the pains of the past, and then we are taught that we must react to the pains and the hurts of the past by seeking revenge, and sometimes that revenge is in the name and the memory of our ancestors. Do you really and truly believe that this is the way to peace? How many of you currently do not have a good relationship with your wife, with your husband, or your own children? How many of you, as we are speaking here today, do not speak to some relative of yours simply because they have done something which you believe is unforgivable? If you look at your extended family, your relatives, your aunts, your uncles, your nieces, your nephews, and yes, your own brothers and sisters, if you want to live in peace with all of them, it means that at some point in time, you must be able to forgive and move on, or you will never find peace. As emotional beings, this is a fact of life. How many of you at this moment do not get along with or speak to a neighbor, a friend, a co-worker, someone in your church, again, because they have somehow done you wrong? You feel slighted, your ego is bruised, or they believe in a different politics. And because of some of this, you do not speak to them anymore. Yes, if you want peace in your life, if you want peace at work, if you want peace in your church, if you want peace with your neighbors, you must be ready, willing, and able to forgive them for whatever you think they have done you wrong. As an emotional being, yes, this is a fact of life. My fellow souls, this is a universal principle. It applies in all places and at all times. Let us look at the current wars being fought by different countries and different organizations on this, our Mother Earth. As we're talking now, do you see that those wars are being fought because no one is willing to forgive anyone else? They've held on to a history of wrongdoings by each side, and they have been taught by generations to continue to hate, to dislike, and to fight. Because forgiveness does not come up in their heart. Because they choose not to forgive, they hate, they dislike, they fight wars, and those wars in which only the innocent people suffers the most. Let us think about this for a moment, and we will find that in our entire lives we have been conditioned to not forgive. You have never taken a class which teaches you about forgiveness. If you think back on your most favorite of movies, chances are it will be one based on taking revenge. The movie begins with someone doing something wrong to a good guy or his family, and the rest of the movie is all about exacting revenge on those who have done them wrong. We are conditioned, we are taught to hate and to dislike, and then we go practice that hate and dislike and unforgiving dislike in our own daily lives. So when someone does something against us, or they do something we do not like, or someone we disagree with, we hold it against them forever. They scream at us, we scream back at them, They post something bad about you on Facebook, and you feel compelled to go and say something bad about them so you could exact your revenge. There is not much that teaches us about forgiveness. Try to recall the last movie you've seen that was based on forgiving and loving everyone else. Chances are you couldn't remember such a movie, can you? The stories we grew up with, even though the Ramayana and the Bhagavad Gita teaches us about love and compassion, forgiveness, and all of those good things, what is the one idea that you remember most from those stories, from those teachings? The premise you remember the most is that Lord Rama exacted revenge upon Ravana for abducting his wife Sita. And from the Mahabharata, you remember that Krishna helped Arjuna and the Pandavas to exact revenge upon Duryodhana and his family for what began as gambling, something we should not have been doing anyway. I am not making light of our good books, but what do we take away the most? We strengthen this idea of revenge in our heads. Even though the Bible says revenge belongs to the Lord, still many stories in the Bible is all about taking revenge. Very much like the word integrity, the word forgiveness is talked about a lot. It is not practiced very often, and by very many. From a realistic point of view, when we do not forgive, it is like driving forward while only looking in the rear view mirror, and nothing will ever come out of that is good. The reality is that too many of us have made a life that is not a normal state of being. Here is how we think. Here's how we are taught to think and encouraged to be by the leaders of today. One set of people were enslaved by another set of people a long time ago, and for that we must always fight, hate, and dislike each other. So-called leaders propagate this way of thinking. They lead us by keeping people ignorant, not by enlightening them. One country stole from another country 100 years ago, and for that they owe us forever, and because of this we must hate, long-lasting and forever. The always shifting borders of countries, which are now somewhat settled, but we must fight for what it used to be in the name of our long-dead ancestors. Sometimes we are so focused on the past that we can no longer see the road ahead. Instead, we have chosen to replay the movies of the past in our minds in that continuous loop that even now we remain morally and spiritually blind. We choose to only engage in discussions which keep the juices of hate and dislike aggressively flowing, and keeps the differences between us magnified, so that the flames of hate keep burning away any thought of peace which dares to arise in the mind. Then boldly we go and we proclaim these differences on social media and claim that God is only on our side. And when someone steps in and disagrees, we lambaste them with insults so that we can continue to fatten our own egos, our friends, our families, and anyone who would listen with the poisonous foods of hate and dislike. All of this instead of just letting go, instead of simply forgiving, shaking hands, bowing to each other, moving on into the future, choosing to create a peaceful world. You may have heard it said that love makes the world go around, but when you think carefully about it, to practice true love, to show universal love, there must be forgiveness. Without forgiveness, there is no love, and without love, there is no forgiveness. My fellow souls, I will say this again. This forgiveness is a universal principle. It applies in all places and at all times. This too is a universal truth, unchanging truth. As I conclude today, I honestly pray that God bless you listening to me with the determination, the strength, the motivation, and the divine inspiration to forgive all that you may have done or all that you think has been done to you in your own quest for peace, bliss, unity, and love. May God bless each and every one of you. Namaste.